Good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Hermit. Make sure this sounds, the sound's up. I found this saint that he's for today, the 19th of February, one I hadn't heard of. He was a bishop, 7th century, late 7th century, died in 682. And he's the one that was born in Benevento, Italy, toward the end of St. Gregory the Great's time as Pope, and he lived 20 kilometers from where Padre Pio lived, Pietrelcino. So, this is about, oh dear me, here we go, Saint Barbatus. He made great progress in his studies and in his spiritual life, did this Barbatus, that he received holy orders as soon as the canons of the church, the canon laws of the church allowed it back then. He was at first employed by the bishop in preaching, but when his efforts to reform a cadre of parishioners from St. Basil's in Morcona, Italy, failed, he returned to Benevento. This Saint Barbatus, he wasn't a saint then, of course, but in the 600s. So Benevento citizens practiced idolatry and superstition. They were into New Age. It wasn't called that then. It's more known as Gnosticism, or other terms like superstition and idolatry. And all of those practices were endorsed by the Duke, Prince Romuald. That's not Romuald who started the, what's the name of that order? Oh my goodness, terrible. My head injury. This is my area of that head impact back in 2018 wasn't that long ago. I flew off the stairs and had a double brain bleed and big concussion and all. And it causes me this word memory thing. Regardless, this Prince Romuald, who was the son of Grimoald, the king of the Lombards, the Prince Romuald was endorsing and encouraging and practicing all these New Age practices of his people, of the citizens of Benevento. So, but the let's see, was it Romuald, Grimoald, who had edified all Christians by his conversion. So even though you can have all this New Age and superstition and all that, someone can come along who is converted to Christianity and lights a fire under people. And that's what happened. But unfortunately, Prince Romuald, who ended up converting, had venerated a golden viper, golden snake, and hung animal skins on a tree used for pagan ceremonies. Archers then would superstitiously shoot the animal skins during public games. Those were just the kinds of, so he had done that. He had started that practice and had venerated this viper that the people weren't giving it up. Some were, but others weren't, including these archers that kept these superstitious practices going. In when they'd have these public games, it'd be like our big sporting events. Like if the football players at the In the United States, they just had the Super Bowl, the big football game of the whole year. All these people get really into it. It's, and it's good. It's exercise. It's a sport, fine and dandy. But it is really very, very popular. And a lot of people will, as if venerate football, not go to church and things. That can be typical. That, people will prefer something else to worshiping God. So it's easy in a way still to get people off kilter, not necessarily into New Age, but just away from God in various ways. But so Saint Barbatus, so he preached zealously against superstition. He foretold the distress of their city. He could see, what things were happening to the city, and talked about the calamities that would come and suffer from the emperor's invasion, because the Emperor Constance at that time was very much into all this New Age practices and superstition. So when Emperor Constance laid siege to Benevento, Hildebrand, the bishop of Benevento, passed away. He must have been either killed in that siege or something. Once order was restored, Father Barbatus was consecrated bishop in the place of Hildebrand, the other bishop. That was in March 10 of 663. So invested with the episcopal staff and position, Bishop Barbatus abolished superstitious practices. In 680, he assisted at Pope Agatho's council in Rome. The following year, he assisted at the Sixth General Council held in Constantinople against the Monothelites. So he was really a great leader, strong against New Age practices, which is what all that was, or Gnosticism, and got rid of it in good sections of Italy, and even helped with Pope Agatha's, his council in Rome, to instill the need to thwart these non-Christian practices that were so tempting for people, and so they sound silly to us, worshiping a viper and hanging skins and having those be part of the idolatry and the superstitions, and the archers would shoot them as part of the, it just seems nonsense to us. But today people are doing New Age practices, wearing quartzes and cleansing the cleansing the gemstones with other quartzes, and giving great strength and powers to these stones. That if I'd wear the kryptonite on my left wrist, I would have access to supernatural knowledge and gifts and powers just from wearing it. But then once it was on me, I had to be purified, and then you'd have to get a quartz to draw out all of the impurities from the kryptonite. So it just goes on and on. All these different rituals then, and angels, and what months they have, and what zodiac signs, and what chakras they affect in the body, and what all they'll do, and the good, it just goes on and on. The things, the color that's attributed to them, their special name and their special powers, and it just gets boggling. And as I'd mentioned it regarding that Uriel, that is an angel that does originally in older literature, and in Judaic literature has a different name. And so it can be that maybe that angel is an angel of God, but is not listed in the Bible. And we don't really have to worry about it. It's we have plenty of angels. We have 3 named ones, archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael. And God evidently figures that's sufficient for us for now. If we're in heaven and we meet these other angels, great. Or if something happens and they come to us and help us, thank you. But otherwise, it can get to be, we have really enough to learn and enough to try to live in our Christian lives without going off into all these other created things or maybe actualities, but they're all twisted down by people who are not Christians, who have gotten misled. So this man, this bishop, who he was a priest and then a bishop, worked very hard and made great strides in getting rid of, outlawing, banning, and bringing people back to the purity of Christianity and away from all this other superstitious, made up or misconstrued spirituality, spiritualism, as opposed to the spiritual life. It happened again in the early 1900s in this country. There was a big movement, and it probably was over in Europe too, because things would tend to come here then, in the United States. And it was an era of spiritualism, of seances, and Christian scientism developed then. And this attitude that you can make your own heaven, you can make your own gods, you can become your own God, and not in the sense it's scriptural at all, but of our own doing, our own power. And God was pushed out, and people became, and different practices, and sort of a precursor of another wave of New Age that came again in the 50s and 60s then, 1960s. And then again, now it's, it just keeps recycling, and with different practices and superstitions, and they don't call them superstitions. They just keep changing the name when people get onto it and realize, and it is put down, they come up, it just pops up a new name for it, a new title or label, and then a new attempt to validate it in certain circles of people. So by psychics, people that the devil gets, they get involved and fall to that. So he passed away on February 29th, 682, after the assembly held in Constantinople that was against the monothelites. So he was a bishop for 19 years. He lived around 70 years. And he was a great soldier, victor over New Age practices in his time period and in Italy then. And it was spreading through Christianity. But he saved a whole the people of Benevento. He saved all those parishioners from New Age. They were getting all hooked into it. So I thought, that this was no coincidence that I didn't feel. This is the first saint I've come across that was so specifically as a priest first and finally a bishop, but most of his work was done as when he was a priest on that specific problem, so clearly stated as that problem. And there were others, of course, that fought against Gnosticism and things, but this one was just, and I'd not ever heard of him, and I just knew that the Holy Spirit was giving that to us as a good example of the reality of it being a problem all the time, all through our Christian history. And so we can take it seriously and know that we must guard against it now among our fellow Christians and those who've already left, got called off. As I mentioned, there were Protestant psychics, or people like the ones I met, that Patty, who had been Christian but had become disillusioned and felt betrayed by God, that her sister had died. She'd prayed and prayed, and Christ hadn't healed her. And her sister died of cancer when they were teenagers. And she didn't recover from that and blamed Christ, in essence, and decided that, Christ had let her down. She would go this other direction and had these spiritual tendencies, abilities, and took them in a dark direction, in a more of a, I can own these, I can do what I want with these, and I'll make myself a healer. I'll learn how to channel from this Lady Catherine and get my own spirit guide. And well, who are these spirit guides? They're demons who have power and can say things that are accurate, but they're not all accurate, because they can't be 100% accurate, because the devil has powers, but isn't God. God is perfect. God is accurate all the time, and not these other entities. So that's how you know. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. And helps, at least I thought it was a great example of God even reaching in today, after my video yesterday, to augment, to help with this project, with my little video sharing project, which I will repeat, started out just me sharing my life, thinking my grandchildren might someday, especially my granddaughters who don't know me at all. I've been banished, in essence. They'll respond, but it's not encouraged by their parents, and I've wanted to go back, and I'm not invited to come visit at all. And and this was the first year, no phone call at Christmas. But I knew not, I'd sent gifts and stuff. I knew not to. I texted, but didn't have a text back. But I know not to upset anymore. I realize that I think the person, it's too much. It's very sensitive, and I think the memory of her childhood is too hard. And then if she sees me or talks to me, it reminds her of something very painful for her. So in charity, I'm letting go. Other than prayer, and my love is here and sent out, and will always be with me. And when we are all in heaven, all will be well. That's my prayer and my confidence in God, and they will all understand, and Jesus will explain it and give them insight into also me, and how it was a process to adapt to pain, and without the medication, it was and adapt to my whole life changing. That I was struggling too, in a big way. I was the leader who was hindered by a lot of struggling and strife and adaptation to a total life shift in big ways and loads of pain. So it took me a while and get a grip on my own upset, and to get a grip on temper and frustration. And even a couple of years ago, a person was angry with me for something connected with the ex-husband who had been doing something not good in that a couple of years ago with a grandchild. And I got blamed for not how was it put, not putting him in a box and keeping him there, or the divorce in a box or something. I hadn't talked about the divorce. I was upset that this person had done that, and which was a bad thing for just perverse, really, but not a well person, psychologically disordered in a very negative way. Evil gets in, evil way, harmful to others, and I didn't like the harm was to a grandchild in that instance. But for me, it doesn't take much, because all of my body is linked to that time period, 40 and a half years ago, and it's just there. So, but it isn't anything that I am ruled by, and I understand, but I dared warn or explain to this other daughter, to be careful with the granddaughters, and also to not allow that putting down of the one grandson to his son and other daughter behind that child's back. It could happen. He could be doing it to her daughters, and so don't perpetuate in that. Say no, thank you. I don't want to hear this. If the person calls again, if the ex-husband calls again to badmouth one of his grandchildren to the other, to the aunt and uncle, just, that's not positive. That's not of God. And so why allow that? Why enable it, in other words? So that had been my point, but done very gently and very, carefully, without coming right out with how I was outraged by it. I'll protect any of my grandchildren and children, and I did. But see, then I got blamed. And it's a tough situation, because I would do that no matter who the sick person was, and I'm talking psychologically sick, that is not being dealt with. So, and then that got me in trouble, just even talking about bipolar disorder and borderline bipolar personality disorder. Bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder. In a video, I didn't even go into depth on it, but someone got very insulted and upset by it and angry, triggered, and left a comment, and I hadn't meant any harm by it. I had included bipolar with personality disorder, and it's not. My mistake. It's a mood disorder, one of several different mood disorders, including depressions, types of depressions. My sister has a depressive disorder in the line of the mood disorder, plus anxiety disorder, which is included in that whole spectrum. And she deals with it, and she's on medication, has been for years. She was likely born with it, and it just got worse. And having children even made it worse, hormonal and chemical imbalance in her brain, hormonal chemical imbalances. There's no shame in it. Unfortunately, and I don't think anymore, but back in the 80s and 70s, people were, I think it was sort of scary to people or something, or they didn't understand, or thought, oh, you can just snap out of it, be happy, No, it's, some people have chemical, can't help it or born with it. And same with bipolar. They're not putting it on, or it's nothing that they've done wrong. And I wish they would, wouldn't, I wish the person realized that and didn't react. But it wasn't bipolar. The person that I reread, and that was the borderline personality disorder the person has, and reacted. But they do. If poked, if something pokes, they can trigger, and it's not good when they trigger. They react and very upset over things that other people who don't have borderline would not. But I think the point is that I must have said a sickness. I don't believe I said borderline was a sickness, but it's a disorder. Well, call it what you want. It's a disorder. My mystic is disorder. My spine is disordered. It certainly makes me sick, and it was a lot of, took a lot to get control over, my temper regarding being in so much pain, and then having, especially the son. Well, boys can be pretty hard to handle, and when he would misbehave and stuff, I didn't have any means other than my voice to be stern. But on top of pain, when my pain was out of control, it would come out really too much as temper. So that was on me. But so anyway, things happen, and it takes time to adapt and to grow and improve ourselves. So, but we can easily make mistakes and hurt people's feelings or seem not sensitive to disorders or whatever it is that I have to talk about in the video. So I apologize. I didn't mean to get anybody going upset. And but I have a different view of these things, I guess. And that I don't think that it's a horrible thing to have imperfections. So, but I have to be more careful, I think, I don't mean to poke someone and get them triggered and very upset over things. And I have to remember that there's people out there who, might see a video and really resent that their disorder is mentioned. So I apologize to all of you. And I don't know, I was going to discuss borderline personality disorder, but I think I'll wait a while. And because I still think it's important for us to know all these disorders, not just to know or recognize in another person. That's not the point. It's to help keep ourselves from getting out of order and to recognize and then to get help, get therapy. Or if medications will help, then to get that. But with personality disorders, medications generally don't help. You need therapy. And what a wonderful gift is therapy from people. So I'll stop. I guess I merged off. That was unfinished business from some comments left. And not at all on the topic of New Age, but I suppose New Age can be similar in that we can get hooked on that. And you don't get hooked onto disorders, but they can develop. They can develop if we don't keep all in balance. And all these other aspects, New Age and things, can get us very out of balance with getting drawn into what is enticing of a different nature. So just stay close to God all the time and be aware of ourselves and our behaviors and our thoughts and processes. And that way we can navigate our lives in a healthy way in all aspects. Mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. God bless His real presence in us. And feel free to leave comments. And if you notice things that I say, some of you that are wrong or could hurt someone or aggravate, please let me know. I'm not intending to cause consternation or upset. But my goal is to, I guess, help teach, and become aware of different disorders and personality disorders in part. Things like New Age, anything that will take us away from God, even in ways that God understands, not sin, but something that can be improved upon by us with help, as long as we will admit and recognize. And that's one thing this person did, recognize, said, in addition to being upset with me and that I didn't know what I was talking about and blah, blah, which I do clinically know what I'm talking about, but I haven't had borderline personality disorder, nor have I had bipolar disorder, either one. But I know enough to discuss it clinically, and then I also refer to things, I like Mayo Clinic site and the DSM-5 too, but to get more of a medical view of things, I like the Mayo Clinic site. They're always proven accurate with my arachnoiditis stuff. There's not a lot on it, and on opioid use and things. They're very right on target, and very world known, and definitely in this continent an authority looked to as that, recognized. So I think the more we know about ourselves, the more we can and keep up with. We're living in strange times, and the devil will go in on any weakness, whether or not it's something that's hereditary or, oh yeah, this is my good friend who has the paranoid schizophrenia 2 years ago this spring. Her medicines, she was taking her medicines, her husband makes sure, but somehow they weren't enough, or they'd gotten out of whack with her body in some way, needed adjusting, and they didn't realize. And so she had voices telling her that if she would kill herself, I would have a better life, her husband, her son, her adult daughter, and her adult son, and a list of a few other people, that by her killing herself, we would all have better lives, and that she should do that. So she attempted to take her life. And her husband is always there, but he had to do a quick run, 10 minutes, not run, but drive, errand, and back, or maybe it was 20, not long, but long enough that he found her just in time. And she was in ICU for a while because it was close. He got the paramedics immediately, and they, of course, realized that her medications were not adequate, needed to be adjusted. So she goes more often now to get them adjusted. And he is on watch all the time, very careful. And there, I don't think he's run an errand since. Really shook him up. So, and found her note, of course, not first found her, and then later, it's this note. And so the devil, moved right in and gave her these thoughts, these very convincing to her. And it's not God who did that, not God's voice who said those things. So we have to understand it. And he'll do it with disorders, with personality disorders, with spine pain, and a sickness I had. I got goofy from the devil toward the end of when my other sickness on top of my arachnoiditis pain was getting to be so much I didn't recognize, but I started getting really off kilter on worrying about not being able to get money to Nigeria, and starting to worry about Father Vincent, and that it was ruining our friendship anyway, and all these off thoughts, and not at all right. And so I recognized, fortunately, but not till toward the end of all this consternation I was in. So yeah, so that's partly why I discuss these things, so that what I've learned, other people will maybe have already learned too, but remind them, or not learned, or learned some other aspect of it. But it certainly wasn't to upset a person who has borderline personality disorder. And I didn't mean to, didn't even know, and I didn't mean to insult if I said there are sicknesses, if I did say that. I guess disorders some are a type of sickness. If they don't get help for them, they become sick, psychologically sick. My husband certainly did, and was. When I met him, I didn't realize They can different personality disorder types can mask it. But they all have their symptoms, they all have their reactions, and there are trigger points to them. And unbeknownst to me, I hit a trigger point. So, didn't mean to, obviously. So, all right, stop. This is going to be another long one. Not too long, good. Thanks to Saint Barbatus, or however you pronounce it, and all of his work in getting people away from New Age in his time period. Thanks be to God.